be joined by our football analyst, Mpho Mutloane here. We'll be chatting a bit about three games specifically that I want to touch on. Barcelona, PSG, Bayern, Arsenal, Man City, and Real Madrid. Mpho, thank you so much for joining us on Salam Media, and welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, let's get into it. PSG, could it be the year? We saw yesterday they won 6-4 against Barcelona. They're very distraught Barcelona, who thought they had it in the bag. But PSG coming in there, could this be the year for them? People are speculating that possibly Kylian Mbappe's last season with the Parisians. What do you make of them? Is it finally going to Paris, the Champions League, after that showing against Barcelona yesterday in Spain?
Look, I wouldn't read much into that. I think you got a sense of Barcelona being angry at the red card and not letting that go. Also, the substitution that Xavi made to take off Lamine Yamal bothered me a lot because where's your attack going to come from when you take your most exciting player out? So, but from a Paris perspective, it could end up being a custody match over Kylian Mbappe between Real Madrid and PSG. That's what my friend said on Twitter today, and I'm using it.
That's a good one. Custody match.
But the only problem is that the only problem is PSG would have wanted Manchester City to be the winner there, because even though they haven't necessarily beaten Manchester City recently, in recent times, it's a much easier prospect than coming up against these guys who always know how to win Champions League games and finals and it's written in the stars that Real Madrid should be winners of this competition. So it would have deflated them and everyone else in the competition to see Real Madrid come through, because Manchester City is beatable. Real Madrid, even though they haven't had the best of seasons in the Champions League, they look like a different team. They look like an unbeatable team.
No, definitely. And speaking on Barcelona, do you think that it's wise, going into such crucial Champions League games? I know this is who they have in their disposal within their squad, but having such a young, relatively inexperienced team going into midweek Champions League games with teams such as PSG, who are very hungry, who seem, they've got their punches, through all the seasons. And I mean, you have 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds going against the likes of Kylian Mbappe and Ousmane Dembele. Do you think they have it? Looking at the squad that they have, did the lack of experience get the better of them, if I can put it that way?
Look, the thing for me is that's all they have, right? They've got nothing else. They can't buy players because obviously their financial situations, but they've been holding their own throughout the season, these youngsters that they've done. And it's always been Barcelona's thing. Barcelona can beat teams with 16-year-olds. It's what they've done, right? And I don't think if there was the red card, I don't think we'd be talking about Barcelona being knocked out. We think we'd be talking about Kylian Mbappe watching his future employers go to win a Champions League final. And I think that's the thing we tend to forget, is that these 16-year-olds are also Spanish internationals. Lamine Yamal has made his senior international debut for Spain, and so too are some of these other youngsters in that Barcelona team. So I just think it was the fact that they were playing with 10 men, and that exposed them a lot more and opened up the gap to that massive 4-1 defeat. Because remember, they were leading before the red card. And so for me, when I look at it, especially when you're playing these high stakes games, the moment you take away that a one-man advantage, it opens up everything, because these teams are good enough to attack wherever you've left that gap. And Araujo was a right back, which means that's where Mbappe is, right? And the rest was history. You just pepper that left side. They did try to fortify it. They took out Lamine Yamal because they thought it was, and PSG just grew stronger and stronger. So I look at Barcelona and say, yeah, they've done it a different way, and every year these guys get better. And the thing is about the Champions League is that everyone else is getting better. What are you doing? And I think Barcelona will find ways to always get experienced players to help out the youngsters, but they're living with the youngsters for now until their revenue and profits go up, and then they can buy the superstars.
I want us to focus a bit now on the English teams. They're suffering. I want to start with Arsenal. The now tamed proverbial chokers. The league is not going so well. With Arsenal, just seems like when they have to finally break through the glass, and all of their players coming out of age, so to say, they seem to stumble at the last second. I mean, they did well in the first leg, at the Emirates, but second leg in Munich, it just seemed like the atmosphere swallowed them. I mean, the Germans came out in numbers. The stadium was electric. By Munich, they're using their experience just to swallow them up, and they just didn't come to the party. I was watching the game and I was like, "Hi, man, which Arsenal is this one?" They just didn't show up. What did you make of their performance?
Look, it was a performance similar to one of Manchester City where they didn't want to be too attacking, too aggressive, to expose themselves at the back like they did at home the week before. And so it was more of a let's treat this team like Manchester City. Let's try to keep possession of the ball. Let's take our chances when they do come. But most importantly, we don't want to expose ourselves at the back, which is why the goal comes from a back door rather than necessarily a mistake that has happened. The mistake happened because a winger didn't track his man fully. That's the only reason why Bayern Munich managed to score. Outside of that, that's what normally happens when you play a game like that. When you're too cautious, when you're too timid, when you're scared. Because I don't think they were scared of the occasion. The game plan was to be controlled. Mikel Arteta this season has tried to play this thing throughout. They've beaten teams by holding on to possession. The issue with Bayern and every other team in the Premier League outside of City and Liverpool is that the quality of the defense is not that great. So you can allow the Sakas and the Odegaards, when you get the ball in the higher parts of the field, to create magic. Here, you can't because you've got world-class defenders. Eric Dyer played like he's one of the best guys.
He played like he was possessed. He was possessed. I think he's making his case, for the Euros, raising his hand to be called up to the English team, because I mean that and Harry Maguire, I take him any day.
No, but and that's true. And to a certain extent, if you look at the other two on the other side, who are the two best defensive duo in the Premier League, Eric Dyer outshadowed them a lot. And it's just this game plan of Mikel doesn't have a plan B in terms of being able to be a little bit more aggressive. And even when they went down for 30 minutes trying to get a goal, they still tried to play the control game. They still tried to realize that maybe the goal was going to come by them trying to open up and try and move chess pieces through here. It is slow. You allow teams to defend hard on you, especially when they have a lead. And no one's going to make a mistake at Bayern. They did make mistakes, but they made them outside the box. We couldn't pass. We couldn't cross. They couldn't do anything. And you find yourself in a situation where you ask yourself, yes, you can see that it felt like they went over the hump in the Premier League and then they lost to Aston Villa. Do we need to do this again in the Champions League? Because City were also struggling, dominating the Premier League, but struggling in the Champions League for years, for like 5-6 years. So the question for me is this the train that's going to happen? Because we weren't blown out by Bayern. They played better than us, and that Arsenal, and I can agree. But the question obviously is, how do you learn to play a more attacking style of football while being conservative at the back? And to a certain extent, that's the conundrum. And I do think that, yes, you can say injuries played a part, but I do think that maybe next season with a fitter Jurrien Timber might help this Arsenal side get that step forward. But the question obviously will always remain is how do they break down teams? City have a way of breaking down teams without necessarily losing away, without necessarily letting go of the defense. They're very compact. They play a high line because they need to be compact, because when the team attacks, can't have too much gap. And so that's how they do it. Arsenal doesn't like that much. They hold off a little bit because they're afraid of pacey wingers, because your wing backs aren't that great at defending. And maybe that's where they need to strengthen, is that obviously Timber will come back for the left, but maybe we need to look at a Ben White. Ben White's been sensational this season. The only problem is when he's put under pressure by pacey wingers, he can't track back, he can't defend. So it's a question about that, and also what you do up front. You need to be more direct. You can't be moving the ball around the box all the time. It's great. It reminds me of Arsene Wenger. Nothing's changed. It's just that there's a Spanish man in the dugout, the way I see it. And the only
Yeah.
reason why is you've got every ingredient to be direct. They don't want to be direct. They don't want to take chances. They don't want to take players on, especially when the ball is wide. They're always looking for that pass. And that comes from the manager. It doesn't come from the player. The players are playing against their natural instincts to fit into the system. And that's the issue with Arsenal, is that you want to play, you want to give them license, like KDB has license in Manchester City.
No, that's definitely true, because I was watching that game and I felt like they made one too many touches, especially coming into the final third of Bayern, where they could have just killed it. Take a shot, Martinelli. You might celebrate, but then looking at Bayern themselves, the league is gone. They've lost the domestic trophy. Do you think that fact that the only way to salvage their season is basically winning the Champions League, because there's nothing else on offer? And do you see it happening, and knowing just how aggressive the Germans can be, and just the standard at Bayern, how high is it? Do you see them, salvaging their season? We know Thomas Tuchel is leaving, but at Bayern Munich, without any kind of silverware at the end of any season, would be something that's really, really bizarre.
Yes, it would be. And I think we need to consider the fact that, that win last night keeps their season alive. And it will galvanize them. It'll push them. They'll work even harder. They're coming up against Real Madrid, which is going to always be tough for them. But if they get through Real Madrid, they either have Dortmund or PSG on the other side, and they'll fancy their chances against them. They'll also fancy their chances against Real Madrid because they've got Harry Kane. We can't deny that they've got Harry Kane. And the game against Real Madrid is going to be a lot more open than what they got against Arsenal. And
having Harry Kane there might be a curse.
I don't think it will be a curse. The guy's still the best. He's the top striker in Europe, and
without any silverware.
But the thing for me is Harry will win a trophy anytime. He might even win it next season. He's going to win one. The issue for me is that keeps them in the game. Joshua Kimmich is still world class.
Definitely.
Obviously, Leon Goretzka is doing a great job yesterday. So was Konrad Laimer, right? And they've got building blocks. They've got Sane on the one side. They've got Serge Gnabry, who's going to come back. They've got Alfonso Thomas, who's going to come back. They can challenge the best. It's been
wonderful, also in the middle of the park. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I look at that and I'm like, I'd fancy my chances, even in that cauldron that they can create at the Munich arena. It's going to be very tough for Real Madrid to get out, and they're going to make it even more tougher. Real Madrid going through some things, maybe might have some injuries. You just never know what's going to happen I'm assuming it's in a month's time or a couple of weeks' time. And that's the thing. Yes, Real Madrid is pacey, but that allows you the opportunity to get in behind them with your pace. So the question obviously is, can Thomas Tuchel mastermind 2 wins against Real Madrid? I think he can. And it will help their season going forward. He's not staying, but it'll be great for him to leave and say, well, you guys are firing me, but here's your Champions League trophy, which would be something very, very funny.
Yeah, it'd be very bizarre to see, a manager being fired. Well, he'd probably be the only manager being fired twice after winning the Champions League. I mean, he did it with Chelsea, and then they let him go.
And he knows how to do it, and that's the thing. You can't underestimate.
Exactly. Yeah, and it seems like he knows how to do it with teams that are not doing well in the league. But when it comes to the Champions League, because with Chelsea, I think it was the 22-23 season when they won the Champions League. I mean, the league, they were really not at their best, but they went on to win the Champions League.
So so with that Bayern point, right?
Yeah,
they're not playing great football for a league.
Yeah,
because when they play like that, they will lose games. But when you're playing in a cup competition, it's just 90 minutes, 180 minutes. You can get away with being like that. Arsenal didn't take their chances, and there were small chances, half chances, but you need to take those in the Champions League. And Arsenal didn't put pressure on them. Whereas in the German league, you'll find teams will be like, yeah, we've had some chances against you, and they'll go for it. So it's just it's a different thing. A league is more of a marathon. This thing's a sprint, and he's good at that.
And just lastly, we have run out of time quickly. Assessment of Manchester City, Real Madrid. Real Madrid, Champions League royalty, won it 16 times. They just don't die when it comes to the Champions League. They're so comfortable. It doesn't matter who they're playing. They always seem to have things in control, even if the first leg might not go their way. But second leg, you just know they refuse to die. Really, really good showing
Yeah,
from Los Blancos.
that's a champion's mentality, and both teams refused to die.
Mm,
In that leg, and it was a heavyweight bout. It was the rumble in the jungle, the Thriller in Manila, where both sides don't want to let go. But it's going to take. And it went down to a point where everyone was like, okay, fine, we want to go home. Penalties is what's going to get
yeah.
decided. But that's the thing about, and that's the mentality that the other younger sides, the Barcelonas and the Arsenals, need to get, is that you need to get that never say die attitude, that attitude where you're going to sit there going, I'm not going to go. I'm going to stay here until the end. And that's what Real Madrid have, even with teams that aren't that great on paper. They're not that great on paper. They're living off of Jude Bellingham and playing really, really well. A 40-year-old Luka Modric, a Toni Kroos who's about to pass his prime. Toni Kroos might even go to Manchester United. Who knows? Because I think this might be his last season there. You then have obviously the youngsters all around them, adding the pace and doing all of that. Antonio Rudiger, who's found himself at Real Madrid, and he's playing really well now. So my question obviously is that what makes this team special, better than Manchester City? Manchester City on paper 10 times better than Real Madrid. The only
Way
difference
better. Yep.
is the mentality. These guys don't want to go away, and that's the thing that Manchester City have not necessarily felt in the league, is teams that go away. When they look at the Premier League, they go, these teams are going to fall away. Liverpool's going to make a mistake. Arsenal's going to make a mistake. Real Madrid last night didn't make a mistake with all their flaws. And to a certain extent, that's what gets them in. They tell themselves that we've been here before, we've been in worse situations before and we've gotten out. So and to a certain extent, that's why Bayern Munich would not be happy facing Real Madrid. That's why PSG is not going to be happy looking at Real Madrid or Dortmund. Because
let's quickly take a look. I want your predictions on those semi-finals draw. You have Bayern Real Madrid first leg, 30th of April. PSG Dortmund 7th of May. Predictions quickly. Don't even think about Bayern Madrid. Who's winning the first leg?
The first leg. Are they playing in Munich?
Munich. Yes, Munich first leg.
Bayern might win that one.
Okay. PSG.
But then Real Madrid will sort it out at the end. PSG playing at home against Dortmund.
Yeah. PSG.
Oh no, the
PSG
Cinderella story ends there. Yeah, PSG will run rings around Dortmund. That I'll tell you.
I've seen just how
Dortmund had the best game of their last 10 years. Well, 2 nights ago.
But then
it's not going to happen again.
You mentioned, that Real Madrid spirit that a lot of teams don't have. I was looking at Dortmund play. They kind of have that for me. They also don't want to die. They're very hard at going to the games.
Theirs is different. Theirs is not a champion mentality. Theirs is a mentality of, we've been written off before. Let's try ride this way. And also they fed off the energy of the Westfalen Stadium, which is why I'll tell you, PSG need to win that game. Because if they go to the Westfalen in a draw,
the yellow
stadium that yellow wall might just stuck in a few goals, which is what I thought happened. Because Marcel Sabitzer scoring a worldie when he's never scored a worldie in his life before. It wasn't like, this is not what Dortmund does regularly. Dortmund aren't even in the title fight in Germany anymore. So what Dortmund were we seeing? It was a Dortmund that played where everybody played their best ever game of their lives. That's the game they're going to be telling the grandkids for years to come. To be like, we managed to get through Atletico Madrid. 4 goals to 3.
Very difficult to crack Atletico Madrid, but I'm going to leave it there. Thank you. Always appreciate your insights. I'll hold you to that Dortmund PSG one. I feel like Dortmund are going to get something in Paris and then come to Germany. We all know what's going to happen there. But anyway, thank you so much. We're out of time. We'll chat. I'll remind you.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on.
They have it
Yes.
there. Mpho Mutloane Football Commentator there, reflecting on the Champions League. Arsenal fans, Man City fans, I'm sure wherever you are, it hurts, but it will get better. Thank you so much for joining us for the duration of the show. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Very insightful, very educational. Thank you so much to Kolane and Nasrin Naidu, the team that makes up News and Views. My name is Salalo Makwidi. We're going to leave it here. Until tomorrow, we'll be standing in for Inait Wadi again. But until then, it's goodbye and assalamu alaikum.